Joining me live now is Indian comic and writer Radhika Vaz. Adelle Nazarian is a US podcaster and host. Thanks very much, Radhika and Adelle, for being with me on this. It was Stephen Colbert earlier this year. It's Jimmy Kimmel now. Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, are already on target by Trump in his reaction. You've just heard Trump talk about Jimmy Kimmel as well. Radhika, your first impressions of this? We all know Trump, and I know, Radhika, that you've seen the roast of Donald Trump on Comedy Central over a decade ago. It was one of the most brutal roasts, and Trump is known to be someone who has a sense of humor, but as a politician and a president, it seems to be just the opposite, and freedom of speech has taken a big hit. What do you think, Radhika?
I don't think it's so surprising. He wasn't a politician then. He was an entertainer, and entertainers have to sit through roasts and enjoy it because it helps their own ratings. I think he was already on Apprentice, like that was his show, and he needed to prove that he was cool with everybody, and he did it. He did that. And I remember watching the roast, and it was a good roast, and he was pretty sporting. So he doesn't not think Jimmy Kimmel is smart. He doesn't not think these people are intelligent and talented. Yeah. It's just that now he is a president, and he is a president of an extremely becoming more and more right-wing sort of party. And so this is the kind of thing he has to now say. And he's playing the game. He's just playing the game.
It is playing the game, but Adelle, in the United States, late night talk show hosts before Trump, during Trump, after Trump, they have always, as part of their staple, roasted presidents. They've always said controversial, irreverent, satirical, offensive things about presidents and the people who follow them. What's new this time? Something's changed.
So I think this is a little bit of a false equivalency, respectfully. I'd have to say President, then non-candidate, or soon-to-be presidential candidate, and now President Trump, when he was being roasted, that roast was actually the impetus for him to run for president. And I think you have to see that, if you look at it yourselves, the political correctness that used to not be an issue during the time when Robin Williams was still around, it's become increasingly censored. People are triggered by their emotions getting hurt, but it just so happens to be coming from anyone that is offending the political left, I would say. When it comes to offending the political right, it somehow gets a pass. And I think what's gone on is that the age of hypocrisy is over. The difference between this so-called war on freedom of speech is that it's actually not a war on freedom of speech. It's about accountability, not censorship. Freedom of speech means that the government can't put you in jail or silence you for your opinions. And Jimmy Kimmel isn't sitting in a jail cell right now. He has every right to speak his mind, as ugly as it may be, post whatever he wants. What happens, though, in a private corporation, which is how he was airing his thoughts on a private platform, right? That crossed the company's standards. And it was really fresh. And honestly, even if it was, God forbid, Greta Thunberg, no one should ever, who's been assassinated, be treated this way. It's horrible. So I understand it's about accountability, in my opinion.
I just want to say one thing in response to that. Jimmy Kimmel did not make a joke about Kirk.
Go ahead, Radhika.
He didn't make a joke about Kirk. He didn't make an obnoxious joke about Kirk. He made a comment that said that the MAGA voters were trying to position the guy who killed Charlie Kirk as a left-leaning, liberal, far left, whatever, but actually they're just distancing themselves from one of their own. So he was, if anything, making fun of MAGA voters. He wasn't making fun of Charlie Kirk at all. That is incorrect.
And so,
in fact, may I respond to that?
Did that actually make it more difficult to digest for Trump and the White House, Adelle, in your view?
Yeah, probably.
It wasn't about making fun of Trump, but making fun of his base, which is worse.
I don't really think it's about that. I think that if anyone actually did the background on this, they would see that the alleged assassin actually came from a Republican conservative family, but he himself was no longer a conservative. He was actually a progressive. And he actually was even living with or in a partnership with a trans gentleman. So in that case, no, this is misinformation being spread and to basically indirectly incite violence against a so-called MAGA base. And I have to say, Trump's base isn't all, it's MAGA, yes, but it's also moderates. It's also people who are Democrats who have crossed over because they no longer find the Democratic Party to be their home ideologically.
Yep.
And also what Kimmel said was an incitement indirectly. But once again, he's not sitting in a jail cell. He just happened to have to be held accountable for his actions. So it was very poor taste. Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. Adele.
Dating a transgender man or woman does not make you politically anything. That's just your choice of who you wish to be with.
It actually has, believe it or not, it does actually. It does, because there is a clear line between people who, because it has to do with an ideology. I
have so many gay friends who are Republican.
So do I.
It doesn't mean anything.
I have gay friends who are Republicans too. But
so exactly. So a gay man can date a transgender person and still be Republican, can still be far right. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
This guy, I'm not going to call him a gentleman because he's a very, very mentally disturbed person who committed an egregious crime. Whatever it was, he needs God in his life. And honestly, he is not a conservative. I can tell you that. Whatever it was, he was a progressive individual. And late night hosts who are of more liberal persuasion can try all they want to paint this guy as being a MAGA Republican, but he was the furthest thing from that. And he was antithetical to what Charlie Kirk preached, which was to use nonviolence and logic and common sense to make your arguments. And I think that's why there was such a backlash against people getting fired across different employment platforms because of the way that they were joyous.
So you're saying this was about misinformation, it wasn't a freedom of speech issue, but then it brings me back to the point, Adele, and Radhika, I'll bring this to you. The word intolerance, we use the word intolerance a lot. And this brings me back to where I started this debate, because America routinely lectures the rest of the world when it comes to, tolerating dissent and the right to offend and say things that you disagree about. Charlie Kirk was, in the middle of a crowd that disagreed with him as well. Do you think that's what this is about? A very polarized, sort of bristling, hyper atmosphere where the slightest bit of disagreement means you've got to bring out all your big guns. You've seen Trump react to the Jimmy Kimmel cancellation by going after Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers separately now.
Look, I think what has happened is, sorry if I may.
Radhika.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Don't worry.
No, listen, I'm a comedian. I live in India.
Yeah.
I lived in the US for a long time. I go back there frequently. I think the issue for me is it's this business of accountability. Who's in charge of telling us what we can joke about and what we can't? I stand by the fact that Jimmy did not actually joke about a dead person. He did not in any way mock Charlie Kirk. That is not what happened. He mocked someone else. And that someone else has the power to make a phone call and frighten the life out of the platform that he was on. Now, we can say that the ratings were bad. We can say all kinds of things. And I don't know the whole thing with late night TV anyway is changing because, like Adele, there are podcasters who are wrapping up the thing that happens at the end of the day. People are self-selecting like micro media that they want to follow. So who knows what's happening with the actual ratings and what's actually happening with late night. That aside, I think the bigger issue is that comedians particularly and artists in general, people who create new things, they don't report on other stuff, right? They take something and then they create something new from it. That's sort of the deal. You can tell them they are wrong. You can disagree with their point of view. Okay. But I think when the president or the government in any country, and it's not just the United States, we live in a country where stuff like this has been happening, when politicians and lawmakers are able to start frightening artists into self-censoring, we're on thin ice culturally, I feel.
Okay.
That's my opinion on a broader picture, not on
15 seconds, Adele. Last word to you.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, everyone. I think this really exposes a cultural sickness. Culturally, America is so divided more than ever before.
Yeah.
And to celebrate anyone's murder, honestly, unless it's a Hitler or, a Mussolini or someone who's literally killing people who are innocent, right? It's unjustified.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, Kimmel can say whatever he wants, but he also has to realize there's going to be consequences. And that's where it goes. Freedom of speech is there, but there has to be accountability in return. And I think that's what he received, the accountability end of the stick. Yeah.
It's a lot to think about. Thank you very much, Adelle. Thank you very much, Radhika. Pleasure having the both of you here on India Matters. Thank you.